Hi, I'm Lake, the motor oil geek. Notice I didn't say filter geek, which is why we're here in Minnesota to visit the experts at Donaldson to get you the facts about filters. Because the best oil is oil that is clean, cool, and dry. To keep it clean, we came here to Donaldson, the inventor of the air cleaner. That's crazy. So Gabe, tell us about Donaldson and why filtration is so important.
We've had the same philosophy that we've had for 110 years now, which is we like to solve problems out there in the world. Our founder, Frank Donaldson, he made the first air filter for a tractor in 1915. That customer was dusting engines like crazy. They had to keep rebuilding them, and Frank said, I want to solve this problem. Here's how he started. He made a wire cage and just strung a eider down cloth over it.
Okay.
That was enough for old engines for the time. But
something was better than nothing.
Yes, but a lot's changed in that over 100 years. So every application has to have a lot of work done to get the right recipe for that media, for that application. What work needs to be done is where we start. What problem are we trying to solve?
You see, this sounds pretty familiar to me. Like in the chemistry world about oil formulation, it's always that application dictates chemistry. It seems like your application is going to maybe dictate media design or influence that.
Absolutely. So what problem are we trying to solve is where it starts. And are we filtering engine oil, hydraulic oil, fuel, air? What is it we're trying to filter? We also have to worry about what size particles we're trying to grab.
I see. I thought that might be part of this. It's not just about taking out the most of everything. It's really targeting the ones that can cause the most damage and making sure the baddest culprits are being incarcerated.
Absolutely, right. Like an oil filter, for example. On a modern diesel engine, we worry about particles that are about 10 to 15 micron in size for the most part, right? If it's smaller than that, well, I don't need a filter that's going to catch the smaller stuff because it just circulates and doesn't hurt anything, right? But say fuel, for example, it's particles down to bacteria in size that wear out modern injectors. So 2 to 8 micron, that's bacteria to red blood cell in size.
And that's what you have to filter for fuel.
Let's consider an ideal filter. Like an ideal filter would stop everything that goes at it, right?
Yeah.
But what do you think is going to happen in that situation?
You're probably going to fill it up really quickly.
Yeah.
It's not going to flow a lot of stuff.
Right. So your life's going to be super short. So we can't have the ideal filter. So what we need to do is design a filter that catches a lot of dirt, but also has a long life.
Right.
So we're always trying to find the balance of that. So what we do is start playing with synthetic nanofiber technology. That's where it gets really cool, because that's the really tiny microscopic size fibers that you attach them to cellulose, paper-based fibers.
Right.
If you do it just right, and you get your recipe right, you find the right balance of long life and high efficiency. It gets deep because in air and in liquid, there's 2 different ways of doing that. In air, we typically want our efficiency to be on the top of the filter media. You actually build a layer of dust way out on the top of it. Here's kind of a little secret not many people realize. Dust attracts dust really well.
Okay.
So if you build a layer of dust out on that top, it attracts other dust. Yes, exactly. And liquid, we want more what we call depth loading.
Right.
Yeah, so we want it to go the other way. We actually want the particles to go down deeper into the fibers and catch up further down in there. So it depends on what you're doing.
In both cases, we're talking about a depth media where there's a gradient pore size from top to bottom. That's very different compared to, say, a wire screen type media, or some people will call it absolute media, where it's a fixed pore size and it's basically just 2-dimensional.
And in that type of filtration, it's called sieving. It's like a coffee filter, right?
Yes.
Where you have a hole and you have a particle that's too big to go through the hole. That's a sieving. What we're doing on a microscopic level is a lot more technical than a sieving. There's a lot of different filtration mechanisms going on. So that's why we have such a big team of engineers that just design filter medias, because there's a lot more than just sieving involved with filtration.
Just an FYI, when we make trips like this, it's not because the company we're visiting sponsor the video. In fact, it's quite the opposite. We even listed the experts at these companies to bring valuable information to you, the viewer, for free.
Dirty air filter is actually a good air filter. I know it's going to kind of blow some people's minds, but bear with me for just a minute. If you leave your air filter in until you see restriction on these gauges, and that's going to be on, diesel engines, not your everyday driver, but if you leave it in until you see red on those gauges, you're getting longer life out of your filter and you're getting better protection, because as that air filter loads with dust, it becomes more efficient. So we've got a little air cleaner here, and we're going to vacuum through it just like it would be on a real engine. What I'm going to do is take my hand and put it over the intake, and I'm going to slowly restrict that intake. This is just like what would happen as you load the filter with dust, okay? So as I'm covering the intake, I want you to look at the indicators down here and watch them. Some of them are going to slide and turn red, or this one has a needle. See how far my hand has covered that intake? And if you look on the gauge down there, my restriction's just barely starting to build. Now I'm going to cover the intake some more, and look how much I'm covering up here. There's just a tiny little bit left. And now look at that gauge. And what we're doing is getting up to 25 inches of water. That's our measurement method. So I've reached it now. But what I want you to understand is it took a long time to get there. This is like a hockey stick graph. So over time, our restriction raises. Towards the end of filter life, it spikes up there. The reason this is important to understand is that most people don't realize that they're changing out their air filter too soon.
And just so you know how much I care about you, the viewer, I made the trip to Minnesota in February. Yes, that's ice behind me. If you get this wrong, say goodbye to your engine, right?
That's right. A little bit of dust matters a lot to your engine. And what a lot of people don't realize, Lake, is that a little change in the rating of the efficiency of the air filter makes a huge difference downstream. This little dust vial demo here shows you what that is. So this is just using math. That's all we're doing. We're just using math on this. And this comes from the test standards, is where we get this stuff. But what you're seeing here, I want you to think about this. If an air filter is challenged with a kilogram of dust, and that means you take a liter jar full of dust and you poured it into that air filter.
Right.
What you're going to get coming out to the clean side looks like this for different levels of efficiency.
So what I'm seeing here is that's 99% efficient.
Yes.
So that's really good. Like, that gets you an A in school.
Yeah. I would have you in 99% in school.
Oh yeah, me too, right? So that's 99.
Yeah.
But this is 99.99.
At 99% efficiency, I'm going to get 10 grams of dust that make it past this filter.
Right.
For every 1,000 grams that go to it.
Right.
At 99.99, I'm getting only 0.1 gram of dust. Pretty crazy.
So you're going from 10 to 0.1 with a 1% gain. That's just crazy. Okay, my mind's blown, right?
Yeah.
How can you get a 10 to 1 on a 1%?
Yeah.
That's good investment right there.
Right. Not many people realize it. So when you're looking at air filters, highly recommend look at that efficiency on them. And there's a big difference between a filter that's 99.9% or just 99 or 99.99. They all sound the same, big difference.
So while we're at it, why don't you talk about what the difference between a nominal filter is or a absolute versus this level of efficiency? Because that was another thing I learned today that I didn't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. So with air filtration, you're only measuring the mass of dust. You don't count the individual particle sizes. That's how the test standards are written, right? So when you look at efficiencies of air filtration, you're just looking at how much dust went to it and how much made it pass. Basically is what it is.
Got it, okay.
When we're talking about liquid filters, that's where those terms like nominal and absolute come in.
Okay.
Not many people realize what they're seeing when they see that. Nominal means 50% efficiency. Technically, that's what it means. So yeah, if my filter's 10 micron nominal, it's only working half the time at stopping particles that are 10 micron in size.
So 1,000 particles headed toward that filter, 500 are getting through.
Yeah, exactly.
Phenomenal.
Phenomenal. Now, absolute.
Okay.
Do you know what absolute means? Of course
No.
you know what absolute means. Absolute. Now, we think of absolute as all of something, because if you look at the dictionary, that's what it's going to tell you, right?
Yes.
However, in the liquid test standards, it's a little bit different. So absolute doesn't mean 100%. It actually means 98.7%. Now, there's a little confusion there, and I can explain it. First of all, do you know the reason for the confusion? I don't know if you know much about those test standards.
No. So all I knew was that the wire screen type medias, right, was an absolute filter.
Okay, at certain micron sizes.
Right, at certain micron size, that's what it is, and that's how we operated in the NASCAR world. And then we learned about depth media, and we were like, it does a lot better job of removing particles of different sizes, especially the ones that are really important that can do damage to your engine. We want to get rid of the bad players.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but I never knew the reason for the 98.7.
All right, and guys, I'm just trying to stump Lake here, so bear with me.
It's all good.
Right. Here's what absolute means. Absolute is based on really old test standards. So the industry, if you go back in the day and you tested a filter, and let's say it was 15 micron absolute, on the old standard that did mean 100%. But the industry went to newer standards that are more accurate.
Okay.
So if you took that same filter that was 100% at 15 micron, for example, and on the old standard, you'd call it absolute, 100%. But if you tested that same filter on the new standard, its efficiency is lower because the new standards are actually more accurate.
Okay.
So when you see the term absolute, doesn't mean 100%, it means less than 100%.
Isn't this cool? This is why we came here. This is so you can get educated and learn all these crazy things about air filters and oil filters and fuel filters that you would not know otherwise. Because most people will see that box and it's going to say 99.7, the little asterisk on there. And they have no idea how much variance there is with that asterisk.
Right.
I mean, because it could be a lot.
Right. And you're tempted to go, 99%, 99.9, I'll just take the cheaper one. Now you realize that there's a big difference in the efficiency.
What's the downstream result of that? What are some examples you could share of when you've gone from maybe a 99 to a 99.99? What does that mean to the end user in terms of equipment life and things like that?
It can mean a dramatic decrease in the life of the engine.
Okay.
You're pulling in a lot of dust when that engine's running. Think about this, Lake. I don't know if you realize this, but in a modern diesel engine, for every gallon of fuel you burn, you're pulling in up to 20,000 gallons of air. That's a huge ratio.
Wow.
Now, why do I care about that? For the very reason that you're asking this question. It's anytime that engine's running, I'm pulling in a mass volume of air. So that's a lot of opportunity for dust to be pulled in.
And there's a lot of different environments too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So to test a filter properly, you have to actually challenge it in different ways. So you've got different test dust, right? This is one example, but you guys actually have a bunch of different ones to simulate real world conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. If you think about what a filter test is doing, you have to accelerate the life of that filter in a few hours, right? Or a liquid filter runs about an hour. But what would happen out in the real world over maybe months, we have to do here in a lab in a short amount of time. So we feed those things a lot of dust and we're measuring all that dust. But that's where we get our efficiency from. That's how you determine the life of the filter and kind of roughly what it's going to do out there in the real world over its lifespan.
And you don't want one that just has super high flow. Ask me how I know. At Daytona and Talladega, for qualifying, every last horsepower mattered. And we had air cleaners on the car, and I'm not even call it a filter because you could put your hand behind it and see your fingers through the media, right? It was that bad.
Right.
But for one lap of qualifying, it'd be pretty good.
Yeah.
Of course, being a racer, you're tempted to run it 500 miles.
Right.
The problem is you would basically destroy your engine by 500 miles. It would be down on power at the end of the race because you've damaged the valve job, you've damaged the ring seal. You sucked in so much sand because it would literally look like someone had shot holes in it.
Yeah.
because it was so fine that 500 miles later, there was big visual holes all in your media because it couldn't handle that level of abuse.
But you're getting good airflow.
We had lots of airflow, but not good filtration, which led to not very good engine life or performance in the long run.
Right.
Okay, Gabe, give me examples of taking all these best practices and putting them into reality and seeing what the results are.
Yeah, I sure do. So we worked with a coal mine.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, very harsh environment.
Yep.
Now, they had been in a practice of replacing their engine at 30,000 hours on their equipment. Okay, so they're replacing these big MTU engines at 30,000 hours. Well,
stuff that's way under the ground doing all kinds of hard work in a nasty environment.
Absolutely. So they were in a proactive practice of just replacing that engine. Now what we did is worked with them to install, we did a couple things with them. We worked with them to install a better air filter, and I'll talk about that in a second, and then actually run it to the full life of the filter, right? Because they hadn't been doing that. Here's what happened. So we installed what we call a Donaldson blue media, okay? This is a little version of one. They were using something much bigger, but anytime you see this blue media, it's our Donaldson blue media. That media, the efficiency begins at 99.9%, and some of them get better from there, right? So they went from a 99% filter, like we talked about in a minute ago, to a 99.9,
yeah. We know that's make a difference.
Big difference. Now, by doing that, they were then able to run it longer, and what they did was check the oil. So they put in this filter, had a new engine, got going at 30,000 miles, they did an oil sample.
They're doing the oil analysis all along the line, monitoring the health, contamination, and they're like, hey, this thing's looking good.
It's looking really good, and they were surprised, so they kept running it. In fact, they ran it so long, they got up to 51,000 hours.
Wow, so 30,000 hours was the limit before. The oil analysis condemned it.
Yeah.
Now they went to 51,000 hours before it was time to replace it.
Yeah, just educating them on how you can run an air filter longer and put in a good air filter, right?
Yeah.
Those two things.
Well, I'm sure that filter probably wasn't 3 times more expensive than the other one, right? So just by using a better filter, changing it when you should, and then doing the used oil analysis to monitor what's going on, put it all together, and that's an incredible result. That had to save them hundreds of thousands of dollars.
A lot of money, yeah.
Because those engines are not cheap. That's not a $5,000 engine. That's like a $250,000 engine. Plus downtime in a mine, that's big money.
Yeah, yeah. Tremendous effect on engine life. 2 simple things you can do. Good air filtration and learn how to read that restriction indicator. That's another lesson for you guys today.
There you go. That's why we came here, to get you guys the expert advice so that you can get better life from your engine and not waste your money on things you shouldn't waste them on.